We are calling to order the Monday, March 23rd school committee meeting from Colbert Administration Building. We will hop into our agenda with public comment. I am not seeing anybody in the room. And do we have anybody online?
We have one person online, but no hands raised.
All right. So we will move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have any items that they would like to remove from the consent agenda for individual discussion? I don't see anything. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion from Dr. Horak. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous. And now to communications and commendations from Superintendent McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your packets, you have minutes from both the February 14th and February 27th Finance and Operations Subcommittee meetings, and also from the February 3rd Policy and Education Subcommittee meeting. I want to congratulate all of the elementary schools for their recent cultural showcase that was held at Town Hall on March 11th. All 6 of our elementary schools took part in this fantastic event. It was very successful. We had a bunch of families show up, celebrate their cultural belonging, highlighting dances, music from around the world, traditional and cultural days, and of course, a fashion show. We also had some Irish step dancing as well. So thank you to our elementary principals for coordinating that, and also to many of our district staff members who helped out and that during that evening. If you're looking for something to do this weekend, is the East Middle School production of Matilda. It will take place on Friday night, and then on Saturday at 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock. I know the students at East are looking forward to performing. Over at South, I think some of you attended, we had a program, motivational speaker Jordan Toma. He was at South on Friday, March 13th. He's the author of a book called I'm Just a Kid with an IEP. And he spoke to the students at South, the 7th and 8th graders. He held them very captive. They were a captive audience. They heard about his challenges in school. Most importantly, they heard that how these challenges helped shape him be the person he is today and helped him develop his overall strength. We want to thank the Braintree Festival of Trees. Many of us remember the festival over the course of December. That festival actually sponsored the event and the speaker. And the hope is that this event will bring Jordan Toma to East Middle School next school year. This weekend, we're also having our annual mattress fundraiser done by the music department. It'll be at Braintree High School from 10 to 4 p.m. So if you're looking for a mattress, please stop by there. There's very good deals to be had. CPAC is accepting nominations for the 2026 Community Inclusion Awards. The deadline to submit a nomination is April 6th. And we want to congratulate our senior class and all the organizers and volunteers for the annual Credit for Life Fair. It was held about 2 weeks ago at Town Hall and KL Auditorium. It was a huge success. We had several of our high school seniors take part to learn about finance and budgeting and to really go through that really important step of what it's like to be an adult. I want to thank especially Courtney Miller for organizing the event for all of our students. BHS winter sports have concluded, and we know we're going to be recognizing athletes as the postseason awards come out. We want to recognize 3 specific athletes tonight. Brendan McGeough for winning the MIAA high jump championship. He jumped 6'4" at the state meet. And 2 of our wrestlers, Michael Nigro and Thomas Nugent, who earned South Sectional wrestling titles this year. And they each recorded over 100 wins for the wrestling careers. So congratulations to those students. And that's all I have for communications and accommodations.
Thank you. Any comments on any of that or committee? Dr. Horak?
I'd love to hear how you all experienced Credit for Life.
I thought it was a really good event. I do actually think I learned a lot about like financing, how much everything costs in the real world, and having to budget and really to, put a lot of money into retirement and savings accounts before everything else.
Yeah, it was really interesting seeing how everything added up so quickly, just making sure to keep track of it. But yeah, learning how to budget is an extremely critical skill that I think lots of high schoolers need the opportunity to learn how to do. So was a great experience.
Yeah, I think kind of adding on to that, I think it's really nice, like how we had the opportunities in high school, because I feel like as going into college, it's really important to be able to like be a little more like financially independent and like have an idea of how to do this as you get older in life.
It's outstanding. Did you have to budget for medical insurance?
Yeah.
Yeah, all these realities. That's excellent. I think that's a really important part of our curriculum that you get before you graduate. That's all.
I just wanted to mention one more thing. I'm not saying you forgot something, but
She's saying, forgot something.
there was what do they call it? The math competition at East a couple weeks ago. And I know Eli was there. I don't know if the rest of you were, but the Math National Honor Society ran it. And all the 4th through 8th graders like did this whole math competition. It was really cool. It was well run. I thought the kids did an awesome job, doing that. And Courtney Miller was one behind that as well. So good job.
Anyone else? All right, we will move on back to the students for the student rep reports.
I wanted to start off with discussing this past meeting's budget presentation. And to emphasize that students are asking this committee to do everything in its power to protect paraeducator positions in this budget process. This past summer, I had the privilege of working as a paraeducator in Braintree's school year program, where I watched educators arrive every morning, ready to meet each student. I saw them build trust with students. I saw them celebrate small victories that most people would overlook. And I saw them de-escalate difficult moments with patience and genuine care. And these are not interchangeable roles. These are relationships built over months and years. And when a paraeducator is lost, a student doesn't just lose a support person, they lose consistency, safety, and trust. For many of our students, especially those with disabilities, that disruption has real consequences for their learning. Braintree saves money through its substantially separate programs, and every student who remains in district saves the town hundreds of thousands of dollars in out-of-district tuition each year. But these programs cannot function without the full support of paraeducators. Paraeducators are the backbone of program continuity. They reinforce educational expectations, support students in and out of the classroom, and build the consistency that students with disabilities depend on to learn and grow. This work cannot be done with a skeleton staff, as it requires dedicated, present, and consistent support. Beyond academics, these programs serve a deeper purpose as they allow students to remain in their community schools alongside their peers, connected to the program, who they are. Paraeducators make that inclusion possible. They are the ones who generalize skills from a small setting into the broader school environment. And without them, these programs just cease to function, and the students who depend on them would lose far more than an educational placement. They would lose their community. Again, students are asking this committee to do everything in its power to protect paraeducator positions in this budget process. We recognize the difficult financial position the district is in, and we do not take that lightly. But we ask you to weigh not only the cost of keeping these positions, but the far greater cost to students and the district of losing them. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have many updates about school today, but I wanted to share that a few members of the science team, including me, are attending the Women in Science competition on Saturday at Bedford High School. Participants will engage in group challenges, rotate through situations in which they can work together to solve problems across a range of STEM topics, and participate in a trivia event. Overall, I'm extremely excited to see what we can accomplish as a team at the competition. I also wanted to take a moment to share my 2 cents on what I've been thinking about this year's budget plan so far. As its representative, I want to start by recognizing the efforts that went into creating options for change. It's clear that the goal to make the district more sustainable and use resources more effectively, and I really appreciate the transparency in that. To me, option 4, which is to have 3 to 4 elementary sites, 2 middle schools, and 1 high school, appears to be the most balanced choice among the proposals, because it improves efficiency and it enables upgrade school facilities while still maintaining a familiar grade structure for students. This reduces disruption compared to more drastic options and changes, while also helping to preserve a sense of stability for both students and families. At the same time, option 3, which is to have 3 to 4 elementary schools, 2 upper elementary sites, and 1 junior high school from grades 7 to 12, also presents a more forward-thinking approach by maximizing building use and potentially expanding academic opportunities through 7 to 12 model. And it could also give students access to more academic opportunities like advanced classes and extracurriculars earlier on. However, it also raises concerns about how younger students, particularly 7th graders, would adjust socially and emotionally in high school environments. Overall, I believe that while option 3 has strong long-term potential, option 4 presents a more practical and stable path forward that balances improvement with the needs of the student experience. Thank you.
All the way back on March 7th, the Science Club attended the Massachusetts State Science Olympiad at Wentworth Institute of Technology in Boston. And our goal was to improve on our performance at the UMass Amherst Science Olympiad earlier. And I think we succeeded. There were 74 teams there. And our top events were Fermi questions, where we placed 7th, and Quiz Bowl, where we placed 9th. I'm really proud of how we did. This was only our first year going to the State Olympiad. And since we started doing the UMass Olympiad 3 years ago, the club has become both more popular and more successful. So I think that's going to be a bright spot for the high school in future years. And hopefully at some point we'll be able to win an event. Secondly, as Ms. Donahoe said, the Math National Honor Society hosted the Pi Day math competition at East Middle School on March 13th for students in grades 4 to 8. There were both individual and team competitions. The event was well attended with around 100 students participating. There was pizza sold beforehand and medals for the winners. It was a really fun event to run. This has only been the first year of the Math National Honor Society. So I think, again, that's another bright spot for the high school for future years.
Good evening. I know we are still learning about the budget and exploring our options, but I just wanted to mention how it feels from a student perspective. We all remember what it felt like at BHS 2 years ago when the pink slips went out. I was a freshman then, but even only knowing a small portion of the staff, I felt the weight and the grief throughout the whole school. I know the cuts proposed to account for the $2 million deficit are smaller and impact the elementary schools more, but it feels very disheartening that we have to continue to make cuts. The goal was to eventually get back the positions that we had to cut, but instead we are having to make more sacrifices. I know nobody wants to make more cuts. All of us are here because we want our school system to be the best it can be. And I think moving forward with the budget and the facility planning, we should be focusing on decisions that help the most students and staff in the long run and try to fix the underlying larger issues. I hope we can get to a place where we can reallocate resources that are not needed in one place to another place that needs support instead of making cuts.
Thank you, guys. Any comments or follow-up to there? All right, we are moving to from superintendent and staff, Mr. McDonald.
So tonight, we're very pleased to introduce formally to you all, Mr. Nick Fitzgerald, who will be the next principal of Braintree High School. As you know from your packet, Mr. Fitzgerald has a BA in both history and English from College of the Holy Cross and a master's of English and a doctor of education from UMass Boston. He also served many years after college in the U.S. Army and had numerous leadership roles while serving. Started out his career as a teacher at Milton High School, eventually became Dean of Students and Assistant Principal at Pierce Middle School in Milton, and most recently, he is currently the Assistant Principal at Canton High School. I'd like to tell you that his references were outstanding, and he was the top choice of both the student and the faculty groups as well. We want to thank our Principal Search Committee for the work behind the scenes to help us land such a strong candidate. We're extremely excited to welcome him to Braintree. I heard Anna Flaherty say to him earlier how excited the students were to have Mr. Fitzgerald lead us for the years to come. So we welcome him to the table to share a few words and maybe answer a few questions.
Sure, thank you very much. I think I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the people that were involved in the search. It's been a really great and welcoming process for me and my family right from the beginning. You know, the first interview that kind of happened in here through the day at Braintree High School, meeting with the superintendent, walking the school with Mr. Kuther. Today, I actually met 2 more students. They interviewed me virtually for, I think, the Braintree Student Press. That was exciting. And all along the way, people have been so welcoming and supportive and friendly, to be honest, which has been great. And it makes me realize, first of all, how lucky I am to get the position in Braintree, which is something I've been hoping for a while, and also put some pressure on me to do a good job. I don't want to be bad at it, given the tremendous support that I've received from the Braintree community so far. So kind of ups the stakes a little bit, but that's good. That's healthy. I like that pressure.
Any questions for Dr. Rourke?
Thank you for being here, Dr. Fitzgerald. We're really excited to have you. I think I was reviewing your CV and I was really excited to see so much breadth of expertise and experience that you're bringing that we haven't had. And I think it's just fabulous to have. I have a question for you. This isn't hard. What do you think is the best strength you've seen so far for the educational experience? And what's something that you think is an opportunity for growth?
So I would say the strength that I've seen so far is just maybe the culture and commitment to Braintree and Braintree High School. I haven't sensed anything from anyone, either in Braintree, outside of Braintree, when people talk to me about this position, that suggests anything but a full commitment to the Braintree Public Schools and being a Braintree citizen resident. And that's exciting. I've been waiting. I think I've told everyone I've talked to, I'm waiting for someone to say something to me that makes me pause. And that hasn't happened yet. So that's exciting. In terms of, potential areas for growth or change, I don't have anything specific yet. I think as we move into April, it will be my hope to kind of walk around a little bit with Mr. Kuther more and spend more time getting to know maybe the more substantive issues that are confronting Braintree High School and Braintree High School students and families. Mr. Kuther's been great, but it's been more from a kind of welcome to Braintree perspective than hey, this is a job that's going to start on July 1st and it's real. That's a tremendous responsibility to be a high school principal. And here are the real issues that are going to confront the students and staff and families. And you're going to be a part of that solution. That's a conversation that I haven't really had yet, but I'm looking forward to it. That's the exciting part of the job, the work.
Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Any other comments for incoming principal? Kirschberg?
Thank you for your service and welcome to Braintree.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm very excited. It's an interesting dynamic. You get hired, you get excited, but then you have to wait 3.5 months.
Take advantage of that time to
Meet as many people as possible while still respecting everyone's we have a school year to finish. I'll reach out to Mr. Cooper next week and see what that might look like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else? I will say, there's a dancing with the staff. This is every year. So over the next 3.5 months,
Okay,
you can start to practice your dance moves and get ready
that was not part of the
for the
interview.
dance.
It's not a requirement. They did do it.
So just something to work on over the next 3.5 months.
Fired.
Yeah.
So you know.
Thank you very much. We look forward to working with you. Back to.
Yes, I have additional information. First, I wanted to mention that in terms of our other administrative opening, we've reopened the search for the next Howell School principal. Our committee is going to be reconvening this week. We received new applications for this critical role. We hope to find someone in this role at some point to start this summer, but we're looking forward to reopening that search and finding the best candidate we can for Howell School. As you know, during previous administrative updates, I've been speaking about facility improvements and concerns with the Braintree schools. Tonight, we're happy to welcome to the table our DPW director, Matt Jocks, to add additional insight to our school facilities as the facilities department falls under his purview as the DPW director. So thank you for being here, Matt.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for giving me some time here to speak with you. For those of you who I haven't had the opportunity to work with yet, as Superintendent McDonald said, my name is Matt Jocks. I'm currently the Director of Public Works. Prior to this role, I spent the majority of my career in facilities management. I oversaw BJ's Wholesale, the facilities for BJ's Wholesale clubs. I had a responsibility for 193 clubs, somewhere several 100 million square feet of space. But more recently and more relevant, I was the Director of Facilities for the Mansfield Public Schools, where I led the facilities team, where we worked on projects including safety, maintenance, capital improvement, and planning across the district. During my time in Mansfield, I had the opportunity to deliver best-in-class facilities projects that improve safety, reduced operational cost, and enhanced teaching and learning environments. Most notably, I oversaw more than $11 million in capital improvements in a single year, including major upgrades to our athletic facilities, building systems, critical infrastructure. That experience gave me a real deep understanding of how schools function day to day and how deferred maintenance and capital planning decisions directly impact students and staff. I also want to note that I come into this discussion with an objective lens. While I care deeply about the condition of our facilities and the people who use them, I don't have any longstanding history or emotional attachment to any one of the buildings. That allows me to evaluate each building based on its condition, its need, and what is most practical and responsible moving forward. Over the past several weeks, I've had the opportunity to walk through a number of our school buildings with our facility staff. In one of those buildings, we were discussing the normal operating procedures and how the building was. And one comment came up that really stood out to me, which was the comment was made that they're doing everything they can to keep the place going, but they're spending more time reacting to problems than they are looking forward to solve and innovate. And that really stuck with me, like I said, it really captures where we are right now. I approach this work with a focus on safety, functionality, and long-term sustainability, ensuring that our facilities are not just operational, but are actively supporting the educational mission of the district. I think it's also important to know that currently there's 37 town buildings under the care of the Operations and Facilities Department, each with its own unique challenges. The town assumed the responsibility for the school buildings several years ago. It did so without significant increases in facility or custodial staffing, administrative support, or an overall budget. As a result, we're in a difficult position. In order to keep other buildings operational, we are committing substantial financial resources that could otherwise be invested in improving certain facilities. So we're playing this game of one facility over another. Take some money from here to spend it there. As I visit the schools, I'm seeing systems where we are just keeping buildings open, but in some cases doing it at the cost that is negatively impacting the learning environment for our students and staff. To put some structure around this, when we evaluate our school buildings, we're really looking at three primary factors: the condition of the facility, the cost to operate and maintain it, and how well it supports the learning environment. We apply this lens across the district. When we do that, we start to see trends of cost per square foot to operate a building. So currently, our Hollis School operates at a cost of about $2.60 per foot year to date. Ross School is about $3.04 per square foot. Our Highlands School is about $4.56 a square foot year to date. So there's a significant gap between schools, and we need to recognize that. The trend driven by the condition of the buildings and the ongoing maintenance demands of the major systems. We also look at the types of repairs that are required, whether we can handle those by our in-house staff, or are we dependent upon exterior companies coming to do repairs. At our Highland School, there's a disproportionate number of repairs that require outside vendors because of the particular need of the repair. What this means in practical terms that we are continuing to invest a disproportionate amount of our limited resources into a single facility, resources that could otherwise be used to improve conditions across the rest of the district and the rest of the town. These challenges are not going to get any easier. The ongoing maintenance demands are going to continue. From a facilities and operational standpoint only, continuing to invest at the current level across 6 elementary schools is not sustainable, and it limits our ability to improve conditions across the rest of the district and our other town buildings. These are difficult decisions, but are necessary to ensure that we're using the resources responsibly, providing the best possible environment for our students. So I appreciate your time, and I will certainly take any questions that you might have.
Emily, Dr. Hoare?
Thank you so much for being here. This is the kind of data that I was hoping for. Can you please tell me those 3 numbers of cost to operate again? Because I think I missed one. So we've got Ross was what?
Ross is approximately $3.04 a square foot, $3, let's say.
Okay, per square foot.
Square foot, yeah.
So is that like a per year estimate?
That's year to date. So we took the cost of what we spent in that school year to date and divided it by the number of square feet to give us a cost.
Okay, per square foot. Okay, and then what were the other 2s that you indicated?
Hollis is operating at $2.61 square foot.
Okay.
And Highlands is operating at $4.56.
Wow.
Stands out on paper when you see it, right?
It does stand out. And you're saying that Highlands is requiring, and we've heard this from administration several times in 2026. Highlands is requiring repairs from outside vendors, so you don't have the staff or the equipment or the resources to say, put Braintree staff in there to fix Highlands. It's several times during this year, more than other buildings.
Correct. What we're seeing is a type of repair. So that's typically with our boilers or our heating plant is not the expertise that we have on our current staff. That's where we're seeing the majority of the repairs being made. But also in other systems that, that are above what our staff can take on at this time.
It confirms what the previous director McGurty was telling me. He gave me a personal tour of Highlands along with Chair Rolo last year, and I think you were there.
We went a different time.
Okay, you went on a different time. I think Kathy was also there. But this is nothing new. We've been hearing it from Braintree DPW staff for a while that the boilers and the heating system at Highlands has been very expensive to operate. And what were some of the conditions at Ross that caused a very high cost to operate per square foot?
I think we had I've got some notes here on Ross, but I also have in the audience our facilities director and our assistant facilities director that will correct me if I get any of this wrong. So Justin, maybe off the top of your head, do you know some of the costs that were there? We had it looks like a lot of electrical supply that was driving some of that. We had some plumbing. We had a couple of plumbing issues here. Looks like we called it an outside vendor.
On the water main separated in the boiler room. Damaged one of the boilers, which we recovered through the insurance for almost $60,000. So.
Of a water main issue? That sounds bad.
Not good.
$60,000, one repair. Okay. And were these things that are routine? Like, so you, in your experience of being a facilities manager, are the problems that you're seeing since you took this position routine maintenance for school buildings, or are these buildings that are because of lack of routine maintenance?
Yeah, so I think it's a very good question. I want to make sure I answer it with what I know. And my experience says that some are routine problems, some have been deferred maintenance. So I think what you're seeing across the board is there's been some deferred maintenance in new buildings that has led to some of these maybe larger repairs. And I think that kind of goes to what I was saying in regards to trying to spread the number of dollars we have out over a larger area, right? So a larger number of buildings. I would say that other town buildings have had similar type, either a water pipe would break or we've had some leaks. But I think that when you look at our school buildings, it's obvious that there's some maintenance needs that have been neglected.
That's.
I don't want to say, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't want to put that on any one particular person or on any one department, right? I think that comes from, that's kind of a global responsibility there.
I totally agree. It's not one person's fault. Like, we're not putting the blame on any person. It's decades and decades of not keeping a routine maintenance schedule to keep our buildings up to standards that we need them to be for a high quality educational environment. Okay. And then what were some things at Hollis that are causing a high cost to operate at Hollis?
Just grab that.
At $2.61 per square foot.
So Hollis looks like we had some routine building repairs. We had some, again, some boiler issues there. Dropping off the page, we brought in, it looks like there was some boiler issues that we had to bring in an outside company for. There's a bill here for $6,000, there's a bill for $4,000. So as you continue to look at those add up. So again, major systems. I think what we're talking about, these don't really encompass any of the small things that we do on our routine. We're talking about major, either electrical systems, heating systems, ventilation systems, things like that. That's what's driving the cost.
Okay. I'll yield the floor and thank you for coming.
Any other questions? Member Tuffy?
Thank you. So Morrison needs a new roof. Are we having issues with water damage from the roof leaking currently?
Currently, we've had during these last storms, of course, with the snow, that doesn't help. The snow melt didn't help. We did, I believe it was isolated to only a couple areas in the school. Do I have that correct? Yeah, that we were able to control. So not widespread, not major leaks that I know about, that we know about.
And so what would it cost to replace the roof?
At Morrison?
Yep.
What was our last estimate? Just over 3 million?
Okay, so we would need a debt exclusion to fund that.
I would, I would assume you would, that's the funding method you would go. Yeah, but yeah, I mean.
I am concerned that we have a roof leaking. When you have water damage, there's always the possibility of mold. And I'm hoping that that's being monitored carefully. Yeah.
I think that this goes to what we were saying, what I was saying, and I think what you've heard before, which is trying to maintain the number of buildings that we're trying to maintain. And then with issues in each building, so from my professional opinion, we need to consolidate our buildings so that we can focus on them. And that goes right into what you've just said.
Yeah, thank you.
Member Crispin?
Thank you so much for your time tonight. So obviously of the 3 schools that were listed, Highlands is the most expensive per square foot to operate. Of that, and I know, right, the boilers, the heating system is the main issue. So what would that cost look like to replace the boiler in a building like that?
So we would have to take that cost on ourselves. I don't believe MSBA Accelerated is accepting any fossil fuels anymore. I believe I did the last one in Mansfield. We did a boiler replacement, very similar. It was about 2.6 million at that time. That was now over 2 years ago. So
3 and change.
You're 3 and change. I mean, again, I could put some real numbers to it, but that's probably in that neighborhood.
Right, so is that just now new heating system all set? Does the $4 per square foot drop significantly, or is that there's just too many other issues?
Yeah, I think that we have to remember that the boilers are one part of the heating system. So now you have to look at what is actually delivering the heat to the classroom. So our unit ventilators are original to the building in a lot of cases. So you're going to be supplying really nice hot water to a system that's 40 years old. So if you really wanted to upgrade the heating system and eliminate it, now you're talking about replacing unit ventilators, replacing exhaust fans, unit ventilators to replace her at $8,000-9,000 a piece, times the number of classrooms you have, times then you need exhaust fans. So again, you could invest another several $1 million into doing that. If not, it would be similar to replacing the motor in a 1976 Chevelle, right? It'd be beautiful.
Right.
The rest of the car is a 76. You haven't replaced anything else. You really just put a new heart in it, the motor in it.
So $7-8 million at Highlands, 3 million at Morrison, just for the roof at Morrison.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And again, these are things that don't substantially increase your learning.
Correct, right, this is
Learning
baseline. This isn't new technology or anything nice for the students, the teachers.
Correct.
Anything like that.
Made it nice, but then we'd have to then look at the electrical system. So again, but then you dive into that. It's just, there's a lot. And I know you've heard this before, and I don't mean be like, I know the first time you meet, a lot of you meeting me and saying this guy's telling us we need millions of dollars, but that's the reality of the situation. We can get out of that, we can certainly work to get out of that situation, but I think it's gonna take some hard decisions and getting to where we can concentrate on the buildings that are more best usable, I guess I would say. It's not gonna solve all our problems, but it's gonna get us a lot closer.
I will just point out the roof issue, that is in the sweet spot of the accelerator repair, and that opens for MSBA. So that opens next year too, so we could always apply for that. Any other questions? Member Fogarty?
Thank you. Good evening and thank you for coming today. One question I have is like for the schools you mentioned the cost per square foot, but what's the total cost for like Highlands, Ross and?
So far this year, excuse me, one second, let me just find that. I believe we are at about 100 and. I apologize, I have it right here. So we spent about year to date, $233,000 in maintenance at Highlands. It's about 175,000 at Hollis, about 125,000 at Ross. Again, these are rough numbers, please. These are just, yeah.
And I guess, and how about the other three elementary schools? Is
I'd
it,
have to get that for you. We were just trying to look at a comparison of some schools that were like age, like size. Obviously, Hollis is a little bit bigger, but trying to get some comparison for tonight's discussion, but we could certainly get that for you.
okay. And as far as the, like the, looking at it by square foot, like what is the, what is that? Why look at it by square?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find a common denominator, right? So if you look at a Hollis that's larger, you could conceivably, the costs are spread out over a larger area, could look different. So I was trying to find a common denominator that was easy to relate to building. So you could take any building, divide the cost by the number of square foot and have a cost per square foot. It's just an easy calculation.
Is there any, as far as like Highlands, Hollis and Ross, is there any reason why you focus on those schools in particular?
Again, like I said, I think similar age, similar kind of maintenance issues, just trying to come up with a way to compare schools.
And have you looked at like what the total cost to operate those schools is? Like you're looking at year to date, so is that like calendar year? Or?
That's our fiscal year, so that's a July 1 through now.
Have you looked at like previous years for the schools and kind of looking at what the different schools?
Yeah, I think it would, again, without doing a deep dive, you're gonna see the same similar results that we haven't really upgraded any of our major systems. So in some cases, we might have changed a boiler, but I have a lot of discussions with our team and as we look at our facilities as a whole, we have to start looking at complete projects. So some of what's gotten us here is we do a fix, so we change a boiler and we hope the next one. We were in a building today where we have two boilers with two very different burners on them, but it's actually what creates the fire, right? And it doesn't make sense, but it was done because it was easier and or more cost effective. And I think we need to look at things as a project. We shouldn't take on a project unless we can do a project. So if we're going to do a boiler room, we're going to change a boiler, we're going to get rid of the other boiler. We have boilers in our schools that are still wrapped in asbestos insulation that really should have been taken out. When they did the original project, they didn't. So I think we have to look at that. So we have to think about complete projects. And I would say that with any project. That could be if we were going to replace asphalt in a school. I don't want to do a skim over the top. I want to do it right. I want to look at the curbing. I want to look at the sidewalks. I want to look at the bus lane. I want to look at the parking lot. You know, I want to look at everything. And I think that's the lens we have to look at our facilities through. I hope that answered that. I'm sorry. That was.
No, I appreciate it. I just had two more questions. One question was, so last year, like Mr. McGurty or the facilities department, Mr. McGurty gave a presentation about like ranking schools by like order of, I guess, the condition, and you had Hollis as the lowest ranking. And do you agree with that? Is that school still worst condition or?
I think that I'm going to be measured in how I answer that. I don't think there was a lot of things that Mr. McGurty did very well, and I respect him for that. I think we have a different opinion on how we look at our buildings. I do think that sometimes ranking these best to worst is difficult. I think that we have to look at, and that's why I said we're looking at, does it, number one, meet our needs? Does it meet our educational needs? Does it meet our operational needs? Does it meet, can we sustain it? And I think when you look at it through that lens, it might be the difference in where one ranks higher than lower. So Mr. McGurty had a way of ranking his, I think, by actual physical attributes to the building and possibly cost. But I look at it as trying to look at the total picture of the building. So that's maybe where our difference is, not right or wrong, just a difference in how we rank them. And I didn't rank all of our buildings. So I don't want to put that out there. I didn't rank. I looked at But when I look at a building and facilities and when our team looks at it, we're trying to look at a kind of a total picture. So I'm not saying that what he presented is right or wrong. I think that he had his way of looking at it.
Okay, and one other question I had is like, as far as like we've been talking about like $100 million in like deferred maintenance, but I also heard discussion like last year that the true cost could actually be much more than that. I was just curious, like, is that 100 million, like how factual is that, or is that like ballpark and like, because as we're talking about getting debt exclusions and stuff like that, like, is that really the number, or is it maybe even more than that?
I think again, it depends upon the approach you want to take. So I think $100 million is a number that is factual, but I think it could certainly exceed that. Because I think as we talk about projects and we talk about complete projects and we talk about not only fixing the heart of the buildings, making them something that is next step or next kind of generation educational, we could certainly exceed that. I don't think that that's a number that is that is the top end of it, what we're looking at.
And just one other question I had is like, when in some of the like estimates of repairs, and they talk about like asbestos abatement, like for example, like in the Highlands or Hollis, would that include like removing actually all asbestos from the building? Is that what they're talking about?
Yeah, I think, well, again, it seems like everything I say, there's like a caveat to it, but when we talk about asbestos, there's some asbestos that you can't remove. So or it would be not cost effective to remove. There are some like floor tiles are pretty easy to abate. Insulation around piping is fairly easy to abate. But when you get into, there's asbestos in some ceiling tiles, there's asbestos in some wall coverings, there's some asbestos in that. It's also important, and we should abate those things, but we should abate where we get into a more immediate need to abate is around our piping. So if we have a break, we don't have to call in a company to make a fix. So we have a situation where if we have a steam leak, we can make a repair right away. And we've done some of that work. Or if you have a floor that is a lot of cracks in it, it's also harder to maintain. So like floor tiles, it's harder to maintain asbestos floor tiles. They last forever. They look beautiful. But you have to be very careful when you strip the wax off the top of them, to be very careful what floor pad you use or what grit you use so that you don't disturb it. Asbestos left alone is not harmful at all.
No, and I understand, I appreciate that it's not harmful or anything like that. I mean, one thing that was brought to my attention last year when kind of walking around Hollis and Highlands and kind of looking at the facilities, it brought to my attention that like some sections of it, they have a lot of asbestos in the walls, which like limits the ability to like remodel built rooms. Not a health issue.
Correct.
An issue with remodeling rooms, like installing outlets and like basic things like are more difficult. So like
you are correct.
So like my question is like if you like were to do the asbestos abatement, like that is within those projected deferred maintenance costs, would that resolve that issue? Or would you still be kind of stuck with these rooms that can't really be modified?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, to answer that question, yes, if you abate the asbestos that was there and replace, then you would have more flexibility and but again, I think the cost to do that is going to be prohibitive to doing it.
Yeah. And one more question, I apologize, I'm sorry for taking up so much time to everyone, but what is like, as far as the cost to operate, is that including like utility costs and stuff like that?
Yes, utility. Which again goes to the energy efficiency of the building and what we're spending to heat a building as well. So yes, those are in there.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. I just have one. So if I were to write you a check for $8 million right now, you're replacing the heating system in Highlands is not the thing that's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck in terms of making the environment. Or Highlands, right? Like you're not going to either of those older schools replacing a boiler to get the biggest bang for your buck for the students, right? If you have, there's a myriad list of things that you would do long before you're going to try to save the systems in Highlands, for instance.
Yeah, yes, exactly. If you gave us that kind of money and said, go make an experience or go fix, I would not head to Highlands and put in a boiler.
That's all I got. Yep. Thank you very much.
One more question?
Oh, yep.
We didn't hear any discussion about the high school. And we've heard from our student representatives over the past few weeks, concerns over the high school. I remember at the beginning of the year, there was one women's restroom that was closed for a significant amount of time. We heard last 2 weeks ago, we heard about a rodent infestation maybe, which is scary. So what would be at the top of your radar, at our high school right now?
Top of our radar at the high school. I don't know, what would you say? I mean, I'll leave it, you're in the high schools.
I would replace a couple of boilers, which we're hoping to do this summer.
We have some capital funding to do that. I think our generator would probably be pretty high on our list. Right now, our generator is, again, depending on my budget, right? But if you said, hey, go fix a critical system, I'd replace the generator as soon as I could. I'm not sure that it's going to operate. And if we use that as any kind of a shelter, if we had a long-term power outage, I think we did some great work. Facilities team did some outstanding work, lining some sewer pipes, but there's more. There's probably several hundred feet more we could do there, just so that we didn't have bathrooms out. I think those are the things we talk about, where could we defer some funding? It would be really nice to go in and update student bathrooms, faculty bathrooms, so that they were in better shape. We would love to do that. We would love to get to that point. But I would, again, as Justin said, as far as the heating system, but then I'd make sure that we had our unit ventilators in the classrooms that I could modulate the heat a little bit better. So I wasn't putting out all that nice hot water to something that was so old. So I think the list, I know you asked me what the top of my list would be. It's very hard, because give me an idea what you want to fix and I'll tell you where the top of the list is. If you want to make it more energy efficient, we do a bunch of windows there. But I think that's what happens in our conversation. So our conversations as a team are these conversations that we're having right here. Hey, let's look at our capital budget. Where would you put the money? And then we sit and we say, we could put a little bit of money here. We could put a little bit of money there. We could do this. Well, that leads to the next conversation, right? That leads to the next conversation. And then we have these same conversations with the other town lines. Our library wants some work to be done. Our police station wants some work to be done. Our fire station needs some work to be done. So we have these same conversations with trying to figure out how to do it, a little bit of everything.
Can I summarize what my personal take-home point after hearing you and all of our discussion? I'm hearing you say we have 37 town buildings and we don't have enough money to do all of the deferred maintenance and the routine maintenance on these buildings with our current budget. And you're recommending some kind of consolidation so that we don't have such a high yearly bill for the cost to operate.
It's a great summary.
Okay, that's accurate?
Very accurate.
Okay, thank you. That helps me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That it for administrative? Are moving on to from the school committee, Member Tuffy with policy and education subcommittee update.
Thank you. Policy and Education Subcommittee met on March 3rd to discuss updating our fundraising policies to comply with guidance issued by the Massachusetts Attorney General in August of 2025 regarding raffles and games of chance. The subcommittee moved forward the following policies for first reading. Policy GBEBC, gifts and solicitation by staff, would add the current MASC policy to the Braintree manual. It notes that staff may not organize raffles while acting as employees, as the district cannot be a sponsoring organization. Policy GBEBD, online fundraising and solicitations or crowdfunding, adds the MASC policy cross-referenced in BBEBC to the Braintree policy manual. Policy KBE, relations with parent booster organizations, would add the current MASC policy on parent organizations, including booster clubs, to include language clarifying that should they wish to organize raffles and games of chance as fundraisers, they are expected to follow the law and regulations in doing so. On the next two policies, we are already in our manual and we've updated them. Policy JJE, student fundraising activities, updates our current policy to add that student organizations may not organize raffles and games of chance as fundraisers. Policy JJ-R, fundraising regulations, was updated to provide guidance to PTOs and booster organizations on fundraising procedures and regulations. The subcommittee also discussed creating a fundraising kit that PTOs and booster organizations could use as a planning reference and a source of guidance. We might be able to see some input from the school advisory council members on what information would be most helpful to them. So these policies are all for our first reading. The additions in red highlight the changes in the legal regulations. And are there any questions before we? Yep.
I have a question, I guess, maybe on whether or not there's some more practical, or if we'll be pulling together more practical guidance or examples. As just an example, like what is considered a raffle or a game of chance? I mean, I think these are everywhere all the time.
Right.
And I guess not to like scare people, but I don't think people are purposefully, this is just going to be so far off their radar that if I think to have these policies and revise them, but I think we'd want to enforce them and have people follow them. If too much time goes between that, then the policy really won't be worth. So I guess if there's an ability to give some examples or provide some examples as part of this final sort of approval by the committee, I think that would be really helpful.
I do think that having a fundraising, having that be part of the fundraising kit that we provide to PTOs, helpful to them. We can, and I think I would like to discuss this at this advisory council, because they are the PTO presidents and are actively involved with fundraising. I think it's people don't appreciate how much money our PTOs raise for benefit of our students, and it's important for us to get this right.
Okay.
I just want to ask, is it, it might make sense, if we're adopting this policy, if we need some kind of further guidance, it's more in like plain language. If maybe like the superintendent could handle like creating additional like educational materials for PTOs, I don't know that the school committee has to, like we can have a policy that we adopt, but then there could be like additional materials that are created by the central office. I would think that's just a thought that I had. Might be more practical that way.
I totally agree with you. And I will volunteer myself to help with this. I've been involved with the PTO for a couple of years, including being president for 2 years. And I can help translate the legal language to what it means on a practical everyday of running a PTO and doing fundraisers and making sure that we follow the laws of fundraising as set forth by the Attorney General. Now I can't get you anything in the next 2 weeks, but I promise to make a kit. Let's give myself June 1st. Right, I can work with the central office. I can work with school advisory board in making a plain language kit for PTOs for new incoming volunteers before the next school year, so that they can have that before the school year is finished.
I just want to make one suggestion. If you're gonna do like a kit for PTOs, I think you need to like do it every year. Because the turnover in PTOs is so much. And I think once you're on there, you don't even realize what's required. Because everyone thinks you go in and you just raise money and spend it on the kids, but it's not that simple. So I think it would be something that you need to keep doing. It's not you specifically, I'm just saying like, there should be like an annual, like get the PTOs together and make sure that these policies are being followed.
I totally volunteer myself, but while I'm still involved and, but you're absolutely true. There is a lot of turnover, right? And so I was just thinking about where on the website this would live. That's a really complicated issue because you have to find it in a place that's very easily seen. I think one great tactic is to, have it a standing agenda item on the first school advisory board meeting of the every year, right? To say, hey, these are the regulations. This is our kit that we provided. Make time for a discussion of it, right?
Sounds great.
Yeah, just want to say, I'm conflicted. I get the need for this policy. There's legal concerns. We're gonna announce, right, budget cuts and building closures and potentially rifts again at some point, and we're now gonna put a hardship on fundraising that everybody does. I mean, all the squares, 50-50, right? Like, this is all legally defined as gambling, technically. But this is just, this is a source of revenue for athletics, even like field trips, educational purposes that we're gonna heighten.
I mean, I think the issue is state law, so
Right.
really protecting them by making them aware of it. I think it covers both ourselves and them. I think if we can make it easy as possible through a toolkit, so that's really isn't a burden. And then there isn't a risk of somebody, sort of getting a complaint filed and have to go through that, because that would certainly discourage people. I mean, I totally agree.
Right.
This is not something that's on people's radar, but I think we should, protect our parents and fundraisers and volunteers and help them be in compliance so that they don't end up in, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this, because that is the innocence of it. But at the same time, it is sort of state law. So who knows if they crack down on this sort of thing. I'm not expecting that they would, but if we know about it and we can help protect them, it probably is in everyone's best interest. This has been floating around for a long time as state law. It's just, I think, getting a little bit more attention.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then maybe like the framework, maybe as advisors, right, we can sort of show, hey, this is what you can do, or provide guidance to get, these are the best types of fundraisers that still kind of remain in compliance, but also tend to bring in the money that you guys need to get done the projects and activities that are this money's funding.
I think you have to also keep in mind that the changes are for fundraisers that are raffles and games of chance. So, if you're selling candy or a book sale or a bake sale or other typical fundraisers, that isn't going to conflict with, it's like the mattress thing with the music department. It's not, you're not running a raffle to get a mattress. You're
Right.
So the pie sales that the kids do. So I think it is it's the raffles and games of chance that we have to make sure we're complying with.
I say that the school advisory board is the perfect avenue to get this out, because as you guys know that are here, these are really active parents that are like the leaders amongst their PTOs. If we could talk to them at our last meeting of the school year, which is like we have one more left in April or May, and tell them this is coming down the pike, and then maybe meet with them early in September, because a lot of the PTOs will schedule their fundraisers for the next year in April, May, and June. So to kind of get the word out and then meet with them would be early in the fall.
Sounds great. Dr.
I
Warren?
wanted to reiterate, thanks for your discussion, but we're not saying you can't do games of chance and raffles and Super Bowl squares, but what the law states is that you have to be a nonprofit, right? So as an example, Flaherty's PTO is a registered nonprofit. We do our taxes every year. That would be appropriate still for that organization, right? Does the Athletics Booster a nonprofit? Do you know?
I believe Braintree football is the only one that actually has a registered
I don't know.
booster. I don't know that hockey might, but I don't know for a fact. I can tell you we don't, but and there's not a general booster that supports all of athletics either.
Maybe consider going through the PTO at the high school. I don't know, but like Mayor Joyce was saying, we do have to comply with state law and you can do it. You just have to do it under the umbrella of a nonprofit. And you also have to have a permit from town hall. I think it's like $10. It's really cheap. It's easy to get. But you do have to have that permit in accordance with state law.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then maybe the big part of this framework then is getting athletics and any other department that does these things up to speed with being registered nonprofit.
Anyone else? So we're going to treat this as a first reading.
It's the first reading, the next meeting of policy and education is on April 28th at 6:45 PM at Colbert.
Thank you very much. All right, so we will move on to Finance and Operations Subcommittee update, which will be follow-up FY27 budget presentation.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that obviously over the last several months, we've been working closely with our principals, our curriculum directors, our different leaders in central, kind of work with the mayor's office in collaboration to provide the best budget we can to continue the quality of education that we have in Braintree. It's never easy choices when we talk about any type of reductions, but we've worked closely with everyone involved to make sure that we're on the same page. So tonight, our Director of Finance and Operations, Sarah Kaufman, is going to present a budget for you all to look at. And we can obviously discussion after her presentation on what she presents.
Okay, so as a reminder, on March 2nd at the school committee meeting, we presented our FY27 level services budget at $87.2 million, which is a $2 million deficit given town funding. The budget I'm going to present tonight incorporates $1 million of reductions from the level services budget that we believe will have a fairly low impact on the day-to-day operations for students and staff. And we are continuing to work with the mayor's office to identify funding sources for the other $1 million. So $86.2 million is currently the recommended budget coming out of the Finance and Operations Subcommittee. And we believe that any further cuts to an $86.2 million budget would have significant impact on students and staff, affecting electives, fees, and programming at the middle and high school levels. So I'm going to go through the cuts. So is there a way? That's good. So we've identified 4 elementary positions that can be cut. And so I've put the cuts and then the impact. So we've identified a 4th grade section at Flaherty, a 4th grade section at Highlands, a 4th grade section at Liberty, and a 3rd grade section at Morrison that can be eliminated. The impact will be increased class sizes. So instead of class sizes between 17 and 18, we'd be looking at class sizes of around 23. We've identified 4 paraprofessional positions between Highlands and Liberty that we believe we can eliminate. The impact will be less remedial support from paras in the classrooms and less support in general in the buildings. And we've identified 4 cuts at the middle school level, 2 at East and 2 at South. The positions at East are 1.6 math, 0.4 science, and 1 from the LECE program. At South, we've identified 1 ELA position and 1 position from the LECE program. The impact of these cuts will also be increased classroom sizes and increased pressures on scheduling as we have less sections. So this is our FY27 reduced budget by DESE category. Most of the cuts are coming out of the teacher category, and you can see at the bottom, this is our $86.2 million budget. So with these reductions for FY27, the funding gap is now projected to be at $1 million. And again, we're continuing to work with Town Hall to identify funding sources for that $1 million. And through FY 28, 29, and 30, we are still projecting deficits in those years, given our projected expenses and the projected available funding.
Can I jump in really quick? Can I say something? So I thought Ruby did a great job tonight talking about our paraeducators and how important they are. The positions that were mentioned as far as paraeducators were general ed paraeducators. They weren't assigned to a special ed program or to a student. They are in some of our elementary schools. And in looking at the cuts first of all, no one wants to do cuts. Nobody wants this. Residents, teachers, town hall, administration, no one wants to do this, but we're in the situation we have to make some decisions. And in terms of the cuts that we presented just now, we do feel like they're low impact. And I'll give you an example. The current third graders at Flaherty, Liberty, and Highlands are in 3 sections right now. They're moving on to 4th grade and remaining in 3 sections. So the cut there is the teaching position, right? So they're moving up, they're in classes of 20, 21, whatever the number is right now, and they're going into next year at approximately the same number, right? The classroom at Morrison that would be collapsed, that would be a cut that would affect students in the fact that the students in Morrison's 3rd grade are roughly in a classroom of 16 or 17 students. And when they move on to 4th grade next year, instead of having 3 sections of their current 3rd grade, they'll have, 4 sections of their current 3rd grade. They'll be collapsed into 3 sections. So their numbers would be around 22 or 23. Not ideal, but that's comparable to what we have right now in several of our 4th grades in the district. So if you were to say to us, you're making these cuts and they're low impact, well, then why didn't you just do them anyways? Well, what we would say to that is if we were given an $87 million budget, we would get rid of these positions, but then we would look to our positions like adjustment counselors at the high school that we talked about, or additional reading or new remedial math or reading support at the middle schools, or high school electives, which I know we hear so much about, adding a business team, adding maybe another section of a language. So this is the reality where we're at right now with our cuts, but we're happy to answer any questions you guys might have for us.
Any questions? Mr. Kersberg.
It wasn't so much a question, but just part of the discussion that we had on F&O with the cuts to the pairs. It's not so much that all of those positions, like people that were actually being eliminated, we've got like 2 opens, and so 2 are technically getting reassigned and just not being replaced at that other one. So
we're hoping
to save a couple people.
We're hoping that most, not all, but most will, all the positions we mentioned will have spots available for that staff member in a different school or a different department based on their certification. Right.
Dr. Hart.
Okay, so the original was 87.2 million level services, okay? And F&O voted to support an 86.2 million. Is that right? And the town hall proposal was for 85.2 million. Okay, so going from 87 to 86, 87.2 to 86.2, that 1 million in reduction was, my question is, was that 1 million of a reduction what you just talked about? Okay, so that wasn't $1 million though, right?
Yes, that is.
Oh, it was?
Yes.
Okay, what about like impacts of like some teachers retiring and hiring at lower on a pay scale? Are those kinds of budgetary changes and influenced in this $1 million reduction?
So we have a number of retirements, and what's going to end up happening is that the positions that we mentioned that are eliminated, those teachers are actually most of them are going to slot into the positions of the retired teachers. So that encompasses the entirety of the savings from retirements and eliminated positions.
Okay. That helps. And then, Mr. Mack, so you were talking about Flaherty. So I have twins in 3rd grade at Flaherty. Okay, so I know this situation. Right now in 4th grade, there's 4 sections at Flaherty. And right now there's 3 sections at Flaherty of general ed, right? So 4 in 4th grade, 3 in 3rd grade, easy to remember. And so because that large 4th grade class is leaving to go to middle school, now you need 3 sections of 4th graders. Okay, so that's the one teacher not teaching fourth grade anymore at Flaherty. Okay, and then that is replicated similarly at other schools.
Highlands and Liberty.
Okay. That helps. Okay, so we're still looking for another $1 million to support the final $1 million. Okay. And when will we know more about that? And when might we expect a budget vote?
I mean, the plan will be, the public comment presentation is on the 30th, so next meeting.
Okay.
We could potentially vote on 86-2 at that meeting
Mhm.
as a school committee. Or we could vote on the 6th of April. Knowing that they can only always reduce us at town council. So I think, you know, the recommendation of the Finance and Operations Subcommittee was to get us as low as we felt comfortable coming out of school committee. That number ended up being 86-2, so that would be the number that I would like to see voted on. And we could do that on the 30th, or we could do that on the 6th.
Okay, so we're not, unfortunately, we're still not in a position where we can bring back any programs that we've cut previously. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Still don't like that. So would you say that we're still having lots of study halls in high school and middle school because we're not able to offer enough elective choices for students to fill out, to have classes throughout the entire school day?
I would say things will continue very similarly next year if this is adopted. With declining enrollment, we might be able to make some shifts around here and there, but it would be pretty similar next year to this year.
So what's our strategy to try to improve that situation going forward, knowing that the schools requirements to maintain level services is outgrowing what the town can continue to afford? Are we just gonna have to be cut every year?
We're gonna have to be mindful every year where we're spending our money so that when we do have opportunities to make an adjustment, whether it happens over the summer or in the fall or in the spring with the retirement or with something else happening, then we have to have an idea of what we want to do with any type of found money that we come across, so that when the time comes, we can pounce and hire the staff we want to hire to fill those openings.
Okay. And one question, can I bring us back to real quick FY 26? Would that be okay? How are we looking? Are we like spending about on target for our budget, or a little bit below, or a little bit ahead? Where are we?
26, we are trending a little bit above, but about on target. We've seen some overages in a couple of categories in the special ed department. But we've been watching some lines pretty closely throughout the year that we were seeing higher trends on, and we're feeling good about where we're gonna end the year. Basically on target, a little bit over in a couple areas that we're comfortable to cover.
Okay, thank you for that. I yield the floor.
Actually, just to piggyback off Dr. Moore's last comment, we're trending good now, but that's because there was $1 million brought in to bring that gap, because we would have been short $1 million for fiscal year 26 until some circuit breaker funds and like a special ed stabilization fund came in.
So we are planning to go back to town council for the sped stabilization fund. So I'm working on a memo right now and working with Mike Esmond to outline $150,000 based on overages that we saw in summer school, in the special ed summer school program. And we did see some increased circuit breaker reimbursement for transportation. It wasn't $1 million.
Gotcha.
But it was helpful, was significant. Yeah. So we've been able to carry over in circuit breaker at like really favorable amounts compared to a couple of years ago.
Okay. And then I know you had a slide up there earlier about, because I know Dr. Horak had mentioned that we weren't able to bring back programming this year, but the trajectory that we're on, that we just have more cuts coming. There's no, right, we're talking about restoring anything. We're talking about things getting worse year over year.
I think that's where the conversation is right now. I think we have a really close partnership with the finance department at town hall, Mike Esmond and the mayor, and we're looking at a couple of different options that they're supporting. But yes, that's where it is right now with what we can see in the near term.
Member Tuffy.
So last week I asked if the town had identified any way to close that $1 million gap, and Mayor Joyce said not as yet. Is that still the case?
That's still the case.
Okay, so are we thinking that by closing the two schools, we would be able to gain, I think it was like 500,000 for the
Yeah, when we were
What is that?
talking about redistricting last year around this time, the sort of back of the napkin savings, if we were to be able to take an elementary school offline and save on principal and staff there, and that would be about 500,000. I think in the current conversations around closing that gap, I don't think we're quite at leaning into a resource like monies from a consolidation. I think those will be important in years ahead to have on the table, but for this initial year, closing the $1 million gap for next budget year, we weren't going back, we weren't revisiting that with the same sort of look, because we didn't know where the master planning was going to shake out and where the committee was going to go. I think we need to look forward. I think we are always going to feel like we're in this we are in a limited resources environment. It's always going to feel like cuts. I mean, you are getting more money year over year. What the town can afford to give you more is about 3.5, but you really need that 4 to feel like you're able to stay whole, let alone buy back. And so I think we're always going to be in that. Now, you could think about the buying back in a different way. If you fundamentally are able to rearrange the way you're providing your services and where they are, you probably can get some of those resources you think of cutting, because you're not adding them back to the same system. You're adding them in a different way to a different system. So I think that's like, as we think about how the facilities planning plays into the operational success of, the operational budget, I think there's a lot, I think there's an exciting path of forward where we're thinking about it differently, and there's a lot of opportunities to explore. That's the exciting thing, if we can kind of go back to just how we're going to afford to do what we've always done. And I think it will feel like, wow, we just keep losing things because we can't change the way we're thinking about and solving some of this. I would expect, maybe to add on to some of the questions that have been asked about what the budget approval from the school committee would be. The school committee puts forward their recommended budget to the mayor's office, and then the mayor funds. So I think even if, I don't know if we'll have identified how to close that gap, but the committee could put forward, a budget that's approved, and then obviously the mayor will fund it to whatever extent we can. So, I think we'll hope to identify that gap, but there's still some time. So it might be such that the committee puts it forward, and then in the weeks that follow before my budget presentation, we try to close that gap, or worst case, we don't close the gap. But I think we'll find a way, know that it's one-time resources. So we don't have the reoccurring revenue set up to close that gap. So it's going to grow. It's going to be, that one-time resource is going to grow more than what we can. So I think as we formulate what that looks like, we should be very, very aware that it's not a reoccurring revenue. So the reoccurring revenue is the 3.5%.
I did note last week as well that Braintree's not alone in these struggles, and there is a big push from MASC for the state legislature to rework the Chapter 70 formula, and also unrestricted government aid that goes to localities. We won't find out about that until the budget is finalized, and that is, if we're lucky, it will be July. Sometimes the budget drags on longer, but that I'm hoping that there'll be some action at the State House in that regard.
Yeah, the state's looking at some challenging years ahead. I mean, there's no the state can't replace the federal monies that it's losing. So, I think we need to do our best to be super conservative on what we expect for state aid, be as, sharp of a pencil as we can in doing this, and just, take care of ourselves as best as we can to weather this storm. And I think we've got a lot of ideas to do that. We just have to really be thinking about the years ahead, with decisions we make this year.
Question, in terms of like getting back programming or getting like more teaching support, is there anybody in the district that's like not currently teaching classes that we put like in the classroom more? Like maybe like the curriculum directors, like could they pick up classes or anything like that to support programming?
So curriculum directors are in charge of their whole expertise from K to 12. And they're not only in charge of the actual curriculum, but they're in charge of the professional development. They're in charge of the evaluation and supervision of all the people in those departments from middle school up. So their job is really critical. I mean, you find a district our size that he definitely would have a curriculum director or a department head in each of these areas.
There's only 4 curriculum directors that don't teach at all.
Okay.
So all the rest of the curriculum directors have either 0.4 or 0.6 caseloads. But math, English, social studies, and science are K to 12 directors and very full schedules of the things that Tim described.
Anyone else? Thank you very much. Moving on to master plan feedback and discussion of next steps. I have a little preamble I'll say before. So now that the public presentation is behind us, it's our job as the school committee to vet the options that have been presented and establish a process to come to a decision on the path forward for our school buildings. Tonight, I want to allow all members a chance to share their feedback. I'm thinking I'm just going to go around in clockwise order, which will act as a jumping off point for the conversation going forward in future meetings. At our next meeting, which is next Monday on the 30th, I do plan to ask you all to vote yes or no just to continuing the discussion about each of the 4 scenarios. So purely a temperature check to see if we as a committee, if a majority of votes want to continue each option. If a scenario doesn't receive a majority of votes, we would consider that no longer viable and we would no longer discuss it. If there is a majority of votes for continuing the discussion of a scenario, we would go deeper into that scenario and discuss it further. Before giving everyone a chance of feedback, I did want to set the table with a few quick points. Unlike town councilors, who served really distinct districts, the school committee represents the whole of Braintree Public Schools, not individual neighborhoods, schools, or parts of town. I would ask you to look through that lens when you're identifying and discussing the scenarios. During the ERS presentation, there was a mention of a townwide referendum or a ballot question. I want to be clear, a townwide vote like that is not something that we as a school committee control. However, in my view, multiple townwide votes have transpired to elect the 7 members that are on this committee. Unfortunately, we can't just go to a townwide vote every time a hard decision arises. That's not a practical path forward. Per the town charter, the school committee shall have general charge and superintendence of all school buildings and grounds. I would urge this committee to not shy away from exercising that core duty. Lastly, I do want to remind everyone of the historical trend here. For years, we've been debating the fate of our school buildings. We've seen multiple options and scenarios come close to fruition, simply to be pulled back for a myriad of reasons. Bad timing, it wasn't perfect, it was too ambitious, or it was too disruptive. During that time, our backlog of maintenance has grown significantly. Prices have increased exponentially, and the challenge has become harder to solve. There is no perfect solution. There's no perfect path forward, which everyone will feel good about. All we can do as a committee is to try our best with the data and information we have to make decisions which we believe will best serve the students of Braintree and staff now and in the long term. So with that, I'm going to kind of go around. We'll start with Dr. Horak with any feedback on the master plan presentation.
Cool. Thank you. I'll start out with, that was a lot of information that we were presented last week. I was pleased to see a very big turnout in the room. Over 60 people were in attendance and present, in person. And I think there was well over 100 people that were watching it live, and lots more that were watching a recording. There was a factual article in the Patriot Ledger about the public hearing. It was published on Saturday. I encourage you to read it. I also encourage everybody to take a look at bpsfacilitiesplan.com. This is tons of data. As a data nerd, I love this because it shows factual information that was gathered over many years that helped this governing body make a decision. I started attending school committee in person in 2022. I attended every single school committee meeting, sat right back there, sometimes by myself, before I was elected member. I've been on this board for just over 2 years. So I've seen 5 budget cycles go through. I've seen so many conversations of cuts and cuts and cuts and more cuts. And I want to find us as a town work together to find a solution that can be more sustainable, that we can hopefully bring back some programming that we've cut, start to maintain our buildings, and start to chip away at the deferred maintenance backlog that we heard about today and we've heard about for years. So when you go to the bpsfacilitiesplan.com, if you go to the data tab, you can find, if you scroll all the way down, you can see previous studies, and you can see studies that the town has embarked upon over the past several years. This is not something new. I want the public to understand that this body has been tackling this decision for many, many years, at least since I've been watching since 2022. In particular, there's a demographic survey called the 2025 Demographic Study called CRAPPER, which indicates that with all the available data from things like town census and birth rates and interest rates and big issues going on in our country, the population of our school-aged children will not dramatically increase over the next 10 years. And so we have adequate capacity and to make all of these options viable. Okay, so that's a really important study. I don't want anyone to lose sight that we have data to support all of these options that were laid out last week. My personal opinion, and as I will never, ever support option 1. And I want this body to understand that all those things don't, in presented in option 1, my personal opinion is that they do not help us get to where we want to be, and they will not help us have better buildings. Option 1 won't help us have more sustainable educational programming. It won't help, my personal opinion is it won't help our education of our students. Okay. So far, we haven't received too much community feedback on all these options. I really appreciate your feedback today, talking about the options. I talked with a couple of other Flaherty PTO members over the past week, face-to-face in person, and their feedback to me was, please make a decision. We've been waiting for 4 years. We've been talking about data, and we haven't been able to make a decision to put us on a path of sustainable educational excellence. So the feedback that I've been hearing is frustration with no changes to make positive impacts for our students' education. Okay, so my personal opinion is I would like to continue to focus our discussions around option 2 and 3, but your opinion on option 4 was a very valued argument. And I think that we should continue to think about some of these options that bring positive change to our students' educational excellence. So I say, let's explore data and feedback from the community. So as people look at BPS Facilities Plan, please send us feedback. At the end of last week's public hearing, there was a QR code. I shared it on my school committee Facebook page too. Please take the feedback survey and tell us what you think, because that's data. We need to know what people think about this, right? So when you see us at the grocery store, when you see us out at the Y, please talk to us and give us your feedback, because that's data, okay? Finally, I got a lot to say tonight. Finally, I do not support a townwide referendum like Chair Roller was saying. This body was elected to be deciders, and we are accountable for these types of decisions. This body has been studying the budget challenges as it relates to schools for years. We have the expertise and the knowledge, and we are held accountable as elected representatives to make hard decisions. And I encourage my fellow school committee members to consider that what we were elected to do and how we are held accountable to make decisions in the best educational excellence for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Fogarty?
Oh, thank you. So, I have not made any decision about which, option I support at this point. One thing I would say is that, I think it's important that at this point that we kind of move forward procedurally in a way that is, very thorough and leads to like a sustainable, decision on our school facilities. I think that with this decision process, there's a lot of kind of emotional reactions to different to this discussion, both about people like attached to school buildings, people who feel like the decision has been delayed and they want a decision, or I also think that sometimes there's sort of emotional reactions to cuts in programs. Sometimes people describe cuts to one program in extremely catastrophic terms. So I think that we need to move forward and look at the information and make a decision that is going to set us up for a good future and help build a good school system. I do think that as far as the referendum idea, I do not think it's a bad idea. And if I could just explain, I think if you had a referendum, it would not be binding. It wouldn't control the school committee. It wouldn't control the other branches of the town government, whether it's the school committee or the mayor or the town council. You could have a non-binding referendum where people give their feedback on where they want to go with like a really significant decision. These are vastly different scenarios in different directions that the school district could take. My understanding is when Braintree was picking a new form of government, went to a mayoral form of government, there's like a referendum that was not binding, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, and that kind of helped to like guide the process. So I don't think a referendum would mean the school committee is abandoning its responsibilities or decision making. It would be a way for the town to provide input. Another way of doing that might be like a more robust survey process. I think that with the last survey that we had that was put out by ERS, I think there were deficiencies with it. One, there's no documentation of who is filling out the surveys. You could theoretically have the same person filling out the survey multiple times. And some of the questions I think were not really completely straightforward. They were kind of it's certainly not like just saying, okay, here are the options, what do you support? So I think like a referendum or maybe like some kind of more robust survey process would be beneficial in terms of like letting us know what the community supports. Because again, these are really very different pathways that you could take. At this point, I wouldn't rule out any option. I do think that option 3 is very interesting and presents a very elegant kind of solution where you're like actually changing the grade levels. And I think that that is something that should seriously be considered. But at this point, not prepared to rule out any of them. I do think that like, as far as, I do think that with these options, a lot of these, in my view, are kind of tied to partnering with the MSBA as to whether like some of them are feasible, because option 3 really requires a different, significant change to the high school structure, because you have like a junior high and 9 through 12 on the same campus. So like, I personally don't think that a final decision should be made on these options until we know if we're partnering with the MSBA. I may revisit some of these points that I'm making. I'm just providing like my thoughts right now. It's too early to say, so subject to possibly changing my mind. But I also think that like with some of these, the options as they stand are not, there's a lot of sort of blanks that have to be filled in. How would they be implemented? For example, if you adopted option 3, what would be the district lines of the elementary schools? That we haven't explored that. And so also there's certain things about like the exact amount of savings you would get from different options is not, I don't know that have that information in front of me right now. There may, to me, it seems like there's another process that should take place to kind of explore these in more detail, perhaps as like some kind of subcommittee of the school committee with different stakeholders involved. And I think that with the timeline that ERS gave of sort of starting redistricting in this, possibly at the earliest fall of 2027, everything I've suggested fits in that timeline. So it's not suggesting anything that would that would lead to any inordinate delay. And these are just sort of big picture ideas that I'm throwing out there. And then I also want to raise some questions about the Cropper GIS report. Like one of them, a lot of people have kind of come forward and they've said, what about these different apartment projects that are being considered? So like what the report says is that it's assuming it assumes all currently planned, platted, approved, and preliminary housing developments are built out and completed by 2034. All housing units constructed or occupied by 2035. So I'd like to see like documentation about what specific housing units they're considering. And also another thought that I have is if you're building a new high school, would that bring people into the district because they want their children to go to that newer high school? I don't know. That's I think another thing that has to be considered. And finally, at this point, I'm going to make a motion, similar motion that passed last year to a motion for the district to produce to the school committee documents that ERS and Perkins created or relied upon in preparing their report. So that's a motion that I'm making, if anyone wants to second.
The motion.
Yeah, the motion is just for the district to provide to the school committee documents that ERS and Perkins relied upon or created in connection with the recommendations and report.
Is there anything that hasn't been sent?
That's what I'm worried. Is there something that you think is missing? Because we have been trying to get all of that out.
I guess I don't know. So like, I'd like to put on the record that I'm requesting it. At this point in time, I don't know if there's anything missing. So.
It feels like by making that you think there's something missing. And if you had like, I don't know, it just feels like that we haven't been putting it forward. So if there was something specific, that would be helpful. But our intent was to put everything out on the website and for everyone to kind of see. So if it's not up there, we definitely want it up there.
Okay, and to be fair, like there isn't anything that I have like requested that has not been given to me. I'm not hinting that like I asked for something that wasn't given to me. That has not happened. I just wanted to put on the record that I'm asking for like all the documents that they reviewed. I thought that there was additional financial data that they may have reviewed, but I don't really know that for sure. And I have not asked for it. Off the record or anything like that. So that's just a motion that I wanted to make to kind of put on the record that I'm asking that I think we should be provided with everything. So that's all.
Yeah, I mean, there was a motion in a second. I do think it's a little vague in terms of the request. It feels like more of a FOIA request than a school committee motion, but
So just to clarify, what I would like to know is on the detailed comparative metrics page, they have a line item for total capital investments needed. They have a line item for savings from reduced sites. So it would be helpful to know, to be able to see their spreadsheet. How did they come up with the 61 million for option 2 for the total capital investments needed. How did they come up with the 11 million savings? They must have a spreadsheet.
So those were additions. That was simple addition, I believe, from the planning dashboard, which was all of the numbers of capital improvements that would be needed at each school. And then I think they took the remaining sites and just added up those total numbers. I don't know what exists outside of what has been provided. And
Well, they must.
without a kind of more pointed motion about specific documents, I don't know what it would compel ERS to have to send. I just don't know what you're exactly asking for.
ERS wasn't hired by the school committee, so they're not even bound to us. We can make a motion for whatever and they don't even have to respond, right?
Well,
The town engaged ERS directly,
So
in
good.
collaboration with the schools. I mean, the intent is to provide everyone with what
Yeah.
You're
they
sure?
were basing their recommendations on. I think some of it's on the dashboard and some of it is in the matrix. So I don't know how they've been like looking at it on their like sort of user end in that presentation, but I don't have an issue with that. I think I could see where maybe some information on estimates for work and stuff could be sort of proprietary, like based on Perkins Eastman's experience across other districts in the state and the country. And there could be some data like that we really wouldn't own or be able to get and share. I don't know. We can ask and get that.
But we should be able to see how they came up with their savings for each option. That included utilities costs as well as personnel, and they must have a spreadsheet that they can share for that.
I don't know what it looks like. So happy to ask them, but I don't know what the format is.
Can you maybe restate the motion again as it was?
sure. So the motion was a motion for the district to provide to the school committee whatever documents it has in its possession that ERS and Perkins created or relied on in creating and preparing their reports.
Okay, so to clarify, you're just asking for whatever the district currently has, which is, okay.
Yeah.
And then you seconded that.
I did.
Okay, so all those in favor of? Aye.
Yeah,
Bye.
All those opposed? Do you have any? It's just unanimous that the school committee receives any documents that the district currently has in its possession regarding ERS and Perkins Eastman in the master plan. Okay. All right, so we're moving, I'll do you last. Or do you want to talk last or do you want to go now? Master plan.
I can go at the end, I guess.
Okay. Member Kersberg?
Thank you. Strong schools and a well-supported town are not luxuries. They're a foundation of a thriving community. They shape our children's futures, sustain our property values, and reflect who we are and what we prioritize. We got here for two reasons. Well over 50 years of underinvestment, and the cost of running our schools is rising faster than the resources available to us. And acknowledging this doesn't make the consequences any less painful. At the same time, this moment should be a call to action. We have to be willing to invest in our schools. Investment doesn't just mean dollars. It means engagement, advocacy, and a shared commitment to long-term solutions rather than just short-term fixes. We owe it to our students, our educators, and our residents to make thoughtful decisions, but we also owe it to them to keep pushing forward and to find ways to strengthen the foundation of our town. Because the true cost of underinvesting in our schools and community is far greater than any line item or school building that we cut. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Tuffy?
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank ERS and Eastman Perkins for their work compiling data and presenting 4 options to the committee. Secondly, I would like to request that the school committee members have the opportunity to tour each of the schools most impacted by these proposals. Dr. Horick mentioned that we visited Highlands last year. I've been to Ross. I haven't been to Morrison for a long time except to vote or in the lobby. So I would like to, for the rest of the schools, Hollis, I haven't, other than the cafeteria, I haven't been in the building. So I have the following questions and comments. First, the Sanborn enrollment data on redistricting is a year old. How does it align with the new options? ERS option 2 and Sanborn option 2 both proposed to close Ross and Highlands. Was consideration given to Sanborn 2A, which would redistrict the northern part of town and move Highlands in its entirety to Old South, or to Sanborn 2B, which would redistrict both the northern and southern part of town and balance capacity at Old South. Option 3, which is reconfiguring, having PK through 2 at Hollis and Morrison and Old South, 3 to 6 upper elementary, and 7 to 12 junior senior high school, is the most appealing option to me, but this option is only viable if Braintree is invited in by the MSBA to rebuild or remodel Braintree High School, and we won't know that until December. In that vein, Hollis was estimated to need 12.5 to 18.7 million in repairs, and Morrison 10 to 14.9 million. They are listed as having the highest capital needs in the data dashboard, but under the fiscal sustainability chart, this option is listed as having the lowest cost. It says it requires no elementary expansions and the smallest capital renewal costs. I think this is likely due to the smaller building footprint, but I think that should have been clarified in the data dashboard, because it's confusing that the two most expensive schools to repair are regarded as having the smallest capital renewal costs. Second, I touched on this before. I think we're going to need debt exclusions for a new roof at Morrison and upgrades to Hollis. Should we consider option 3? And that will require time, and hopefully we'll get some MSBA money for that. Third, and talking with ERS, there was some question about pre-K would be moved from BHS under this option. They have it, the students being split between Hollis, Morrison, and Old South, but I'm not sure that they still consider that viable if they wanted to keep the integrated preschool at high school. And under option 3, if we consolidate schools, will there be enough space and funding to bring back programming and add staff? For example, writing, engineering, and media courses at the middle school level, remedial programs at high school and middle schools, and principals have expressed a need for adjustment counselors and special education team chairs. So those are something I think that we need to consider when we decide on a option. What option is going to give us the best chance of restoring some of the many programs and staff that we've cut over the past 5 years? I'd like to know where administration would go. We talked about it being in the basement of Old South if they reopened Old South. Would it stay at Colberg? Would it go to high school? What about the launch program? This wasn't mentioned at all. Right now, the program's currently at 74 Pond Street, and it serves young adults aged 19 through 22 with autism spectrum disorder, as well as adults with intellectual and developmental impairments. I attended a Zoom meeting a year or so ago where 74 Pond was being considered for redevelopment, so I don't think that space is going to be available for them. So in summary, Braintree Public Schools is at an inflection point. Over the past 5 years, BPS has cut staff and programming with increased fees, and we still charge for a full-day kindergarten, one of only 15 districts in the Commonwealth to do so. I agree with the Mayor's Office pursuit of reliable recurring revenue sources to balance the budget rather than using one-time funds from new development, such as building permit fees and mitigation payments. However, last year, Braintree Public Schools were granted $300,000 from the state to fund tuition-free full-day kindergarten. I would like to see the one-time mitigation fees from developments like Armstrong, which has allotted $875,000 for education over the time the project is being built, to be used to fill the gap and meet the financial obligation required by DESE for transitioning to tuition-free full-day kindergarten. If we provide full-day kindergarten tuition-free for 1 full year, then we would qualify for increased Chapter 70 money. Braintree has kicked the can down the road on finding a solution to funding full-day kindergarten for too long. We missed the opportunity to apply for transition grants available until 2016, and we used one-time federal pandemic grants in 2023 to balance the town's budget rather than address educational disparities. The recommendations made by ERS deserve thoughtful review, but there are still many unanswered questions, especially regarding Braintree High School. I hope the options presented by ERS can serve as a starting point to move BPS on an upward trajectory for the benefit of all students, families, and the town.
Thank you. Donna?
I guess what I have to say is a lot less specific, but just kind of where my perspective comes from, kind of bringing a little bit of history into this. So from 1930 to 1960, our town had intense expansion where we saw our population double. We saw lots of development, rapidly growing school enrollment, which was nearly impossible to forecast, still is. So in reaction, we started building new schools. This was relatively easy in the old, what I call bottoms up town budget, right? You took your operating costs plus whatever you needed to invest in, calculated tax rate, and the selectmen would vote on it. Usually it was yes. So growth continued. Our section of Route 3 was completed. The Social Plaza was built, and the Red Line came to Braintree. We capped off all that growth by building VHS in 1972 for a capacity of 3,500 students. Fast forward 10 years, and Proposition 2.5 went into effect. One of the immediate impacts of Prop 2.5 was that budgets had to be cut to comply with the new law. In 1982, the school budget was slashed by 15%. And quite honestly, it feels like we never crawled back out of that hole. As for development, building permits started dwindling, which meant growth started to stagnate, revenue started to stagnate. The school budget was a consistent struggle year over year. Our schools were over capacity and needed maintenance. In the early 2000s, architects were engaged in an effort to create a plan to renovate or rebuild all elementary and middle schools. The cost was $90 million, and a significant amount of that would have been reimbursed by the MSBA. The debt exclusion vote did not pass, and I do believe that vote set the tone for what the community was willing to invest in as it related to education, and that it dissuaded further attempts for the next couple of decades. In the following years, the school department did everything in their power to maintain a high standard of learning for our students, and they, meaning teachers and staff, have been successful, but not without collateral damage. Today, our buildings are old and require a lot of capital to be brought up to standards, requiring both money and time. This is a can, older than me, that has been continuously kicked down the road, and it's time to stop kicking and take action. Personally, my kids are in 5th and 6th grade. It's very unlikely that they will benefit at all from something like a new high school. However, I've always agreed with the sentiment to leave things better than you found them, and that's my goal here on the school committee.
Thank you. You guys?
Thank you. When I ran for office, one of the big concerns and things I wanted to understand was why every year the schools were sort of under attack. Initially, when I first assumed office, I spent a lot of time figuring out just how big of a hole we were in, and we were faced in sort of the beginning of my first term with how do we climb out of an $18 million operational hole. And we had presented the override, and the community had come out in support of the town in a big way for the first time. And that's amazing. And we should never take that for granted. We shouldn't assume it will happen again. But I think what it shows is that people are willing to support us and our decisions. And I think we need to be very careful and thoughtful about that. And we know we have a challenge on the operational side that we're, not necessarily addressing a solution to. But it's taken me longer to come to terms with what the capital investment issues are. What has happened to the town of Braintree and our school buildings over the last 20, 30, 40 years? When we went to do the middle school projects, we were still talking about an elementary school issue. And at the time it was overcrowding. And the new middle schools going 5 to 8 certainly helped that. But we've always had in our mind's eye, a new high school that would support the whole community and be, sort of a beacon for families that want to locate somewhere family friendly and school friendly on the South Shore. And we still have, I think we still have our eye to that. But what has really become sort of, a cinder block around the ankles of that dream is that we still have to contend with the overall maintenance of all the buildings that we have, school buildings and town buildings. And we have to contend with the fact that we have 6 elementary schools and, the decisions we make should always be rooted in what is best for our students. And even with this master planning effort and the options presented, holding on to what we have, I know we've thrown $100 million price tag on it. And, you want to tell your consultants, like, give us the worst case scenario. And they're going to do that to some extent. But I sort of see that number as like a fraction of what it's going to cost us. It's nothing we could tackle overnight. If we had $100 million tomorrow, it would still take us years to put the schools into the place we want them to be. And I think, just think of one elementary school, even our best one that's, in the best relative condition that still needs upgrades. When you think about the cost that goes into that building, and when you get through, fixing the things, are you going to look at that building and think like, is it probably going to be a replacement? I think in most cases we need to build new elementary schools. If we're being real with ourselves, I think we stopped shy of replacing the entire Highlands roof because that cost to replace the whole roof would have triggered further accessibility upgrades that we could never fund. That investment into the building triggers a certain magnitude where you have to do other costs. So we've always, I think Director Jacques spoke to it, we do projects like just good enough to hold us, on to the next thing. And, remember Rolo, you said when Director Jacques was here, if you had $8 million, would you spend it at Highlands? I wanted to add in the middle of that conversation, well, if the boiler explodes and we do have to spend $8 million and there's students in that building, then we never had a choice of how to spend that $8 million. So I think, we've really been trying to and I feel like the town has been dedicating a lot of resources to help decision makers understand the big picture magnitude of the challenge that we have. And I really hope that people come away, if they're paying attention to the years leading up to this master planning, that there is that order of magnitude. I mean, our students talked about credit for life. There's no magic equation on the town side. We're dealing with the same thing, but just at a much grander scale. And the reality is there are limited resources. So I wish I could say that I felt like option one, where we sort of keep doing what we're doing, is what I would professionally advise the community is a good idea. I think that it holds us back from reallocating resources. It takes a long time to raise the funds and invest in the buildings in a way, I don't even know if that's, what I would advise us on. We have incredible pressures on our operational budget. We can't identify how to find $1 million more for the schools because we still have gaps on the town side. We're seeing astronomical costs to healthcare right now. We know that state funding is going to be tight. And we have tons of other infrastructure issues that we're managing. So, we don't have a lot of choice actually in how we spend our money. There's, a lot of ways in which sort of the budget, even though it grows every year, there's less that you can selectively afford and spend. But I think the order of the magnitude of the problem that we have and what we're trying to solve is going to take some really, I think, exciting analysis by the school committee and the town to figure out what we can unlock if we sort of give a chance of letting go of what we have in its current footprint. I have these inspirational note cards on my desk that my kids gave me when I first became mayor. And I flipped it the other day and it said, there's a time in the life of every problem where it's big enough to see, but small enough to solve. And I do think there's a moment with this challenge, if we were to say, open it up to a referendum, a question to the community, do you want to see this? Who knows what sort of response you're going to get, but the magnitude of the problem is really complex. And people do want to trust their leaders to make the right decisions in the scheme of the entire community. And there isn't a perfect solution. There's going to be decisions that are good enough in the moment that we build upon to get us somewhere significantly better and stable. So I think, we have a lot of work still to do on the operational side. And any real investment is going to require future debt exclusions. It is going to require community support. So I think the community does want to see, and we heard it, I feel like, quite loud and clear the last couple budget seasons, that if you do consolidate, if you do move schools, make that decision, but show us where you're going. And we've submitted and approved an SOI that's for the high school, that's before the council in the next couple weeks. That's where we're going. We're talking about elementary school, the benefits, the changes that could come with consolidation, that could come with moving students, what that might look like. We will throw what resources we need to help families adapt. We'll be there to answer questions of what will be the specific impacts. But I really think this is an incredible opportunity for the community to get out of this sort of fearing, change. And I think there's a lot to look forward to, but it's not going to be an easy task. I think you throw a lot of data at something that also has emotional components, and that becomes hard too. I think there was a lot of data that was analyzed as part of this. We had, our facilities director is new and was in the audience, but who we heard from tonight was our DPW director, who has a facilities background. And coming into this, I've had multiple conversations where, very puzzlingly, he's like, why are you have students in this building when you have this other building? And, I think that has been sort of the growing pains that we're up against. But, we've had an outside perspective from there. We've had yet another consultant, Perkins Eastman and ERS, come in and sort of give a perspective. There is a lot of raw data there, and we are leaning on our professionals to formulate some scenarios. Quite honestly, there are infinite scenarios to what we could do. And I think honing in on it and choosing a good enough for the moment is going to lead to a lot of future success for us. So I'm looking forward to the conversation in front of this committee. And as much as I can help bring to the table an understanding as complex as I can to what the town is looking at. We want to make sure that the expectations of what we can afford are there, because we don't want to pull the rug out from our schools. You're 60% of our budget. When we are having challenges, you're going to feel the biggest extent of it. And we don't want to do that to students. We don't want to do that to our educators, our families. And, moving forward, a lot of these decisions are going to require the support of the community. So I'm looking forward to the conversation, but I really do think it's time to move, and it's time to show the community where we're going.
Thank you.
This will be the beginning of many conversations about the master plan. It'll continue at the next meeting, which is March 30th, but we'll sort of end there on the master plan, and we will need to move to executive session. So I have something to read for that. which is consideration to enter into executive session pursuant to Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to address personnel issues, including an arbitration update and Braintree Education Association grievance, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the legal position of the school committee as declared by the chair. So do I have a motion to end open session and go into executive session?
So moved.
A motion and a second. We need to do a roll call vote. Dr. Horak,
Aye.
Member Fogarty,
Hi.
Mayor Joyce,
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Member Kersberg,
Aye.
Member Tuffy,
Aye.
Rodano.
Aye.
All right, open session is closed and we will not be coming back.